Picture this. In Washington state, a man once claimed he had a pit on his land so deep that no rope or weight could reach the bottom. Not just a deep well, not just an abandoned mine shaft, but something far stranger. He said it swallowed everything, never echoed, and seemed to break the rules of reality. This was the legend of Mel's Hole, and for decades people have been obsessed with finding it. The tale begins in 1997, when a man calling himself Mel Waters phoned into a late-night radio show famous for wild theories and strange encounters. His voice was steady, his story specific. West of the town of Ellensburg, he owned land with a mysterious chasm. Neighbors had tossed garbage into it for years, but no one had ever seen or heard anything hit bottom. Curious, Mel lowered a fishing line weighted with a chunk of metal. He claimed he let out more than 15 miles of line, and still nothing. The pit, he insisted, had no end. That alone was enough to stir listeners' imaginations, but Mel wasn't done. Over the years, his stories grew stranger. He said that animals refused to go near the hole. A dead dog tossed in by a neighbor was later spotted alive in the woods, wearing the same collar. He described experiments where ice lowered into the pit came back warm but solid, with bizarre flammable properties. He swore radios near the site played voices and old songs from unknown sources. The hole, he said, seemed to twist nature itself. And then came the government angle. Mel reported that officials seized his property, barred him from returning, and even paid him off. He claimed to have fled to Australia only to be kidnapped on his return to the US. His last known call in 2002 described waking up with missing teeth, unexplained injuries, and no memory of lost weeks. He hinted at another hole in Nevada with the same impossible traits. After that, Mel vanished from the airwaves. So what are we to make of this? On one side, believers insist the mystery hole is real, hidden by powerful forces. On the other, skeptics point out that no record exists of a man named Mel Waters owning land in the area. No coordinates were ever given, and expeditions to find the pit turned up empty. Geologists flatly dismiss the entire concept. The Earth's crust isn't infinitely penetrable. Dig too deep, and the rock collapses from immense heat and pressure. At best, Mel may have stumbled upon an old mine shaft. At worst, he fabricated the whole thing for attention. But the story stuck. Maybe because humans are drawn to the idea of hidden depths, literally and metaphorically. A hole that defies science is a perfect playground for the imagination. Think about it. What's at the bottom of an endless pit? A portal? Another world? The unknown is irresistible. Interestingly, there is a real-world parallel. The Kola super deep borehole in Russia. In the 1970s, Soviet scientists drilled over 12 kilometers down, the deepest man-made hole in history. What they discovered wasn't magic, but it was surprising. Rock behaving like plastic from the heat, traces of water locked deep in stone, and conditions far more extreme than expected. At those depths, instruments failed, and drilling had to stop. Even without supernatural claims, reality gave us mysteries enough. So why does Mel's Hole endure as a legend? Because it captures something ancient in us. We've always told stories about forbidden places, bottomless lakes, haunted caves, gates to the underworld. Mel's tale simply updated the myth for modern radio and conspiracy culture. A hole that can resurrect dogs and transform ice into fire is the kind of story you can't help but repeat, even if you don't believe it. In the end, the evidence points towards fiction. A man with no traceable history spins a story too fantastical to be true, and science confirms it couldn't exist as described. Yet, the legend refuses to die. That's the power of a good mystery. It doesn't matter if it's real. It matters that people want it to be real. Somewhere out there, hikers still wander the hills near Ellensburg, scanning the ground for an impossible abyss. And here's the twist. Maybe the hole was never the point. Maybe it was about seeing how far a story could travel, how much people crave the possibility of something that bends the rules. Because if a bottomless pit existed, what else could be true? A legend like this dares us to wonder. So no, Mel's hole almost certainly doesn't exist. But the curiosity it sparked? That's very real. And sometimes the mysteries we invent say more about us than the ones we solve.
Could there be a place on Earth that could take you to another dimension? In 1997, a phone on an American radio show rang. The employee picked up the phone and got probably one of the most unusual calls in his career. A man on the other end of the line introduced himself as Mel Waters. He started a story about how he discovered a pretty unusual hole on the rural property he owned that was near Ellensburg, Washington. I used a fishing line and a weight to measure it. According to my calculations, it's 80,000 feet deep, Mel claimed. And some weird paranormal things have been going on here. He was talking about a black beam that could come out of the hole and shoot into the sky during certain day periods. He believed the hole had magical powers, like restoring life in animals and allegedly setting ice on fire. Yep, the ice in question didn't melt. It burned like coal. The call went public. Mel managed to convince many listeners his story was true. One geologist, named Jack Powell, was especially interested in the story he had heard on the radio. He found it somewhat curious, particularly because Mel claimed it was basically the bottomless pit. Jack was in geology for decades, and he was familiar with the fact that the deepest shaft goes a bit over 40,000 feet below the surface. Jack started to investigate that mysterious case, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find the hole. Further investigation led to the fact that they later couldn't even find a person named Mel Waters that lived close to Ellensburg, Washington. After the phone call went public, the mysterious Mel even claimed some tried to pay him off to stop talking about the hole. This whole story became an urban legend. Later, many people claimed they found that hole and saw weird things happening there. They heard strange noises coming out of the hole. Others saw lights and unusual creatures coming out of the hole, and some believe the hole goes all the way down to the center of our planet, whereas others go so far to think it's a secret portal to another dimension. A few people think Mel's hole is a spot where space and time are warped. People or objects that enter it never come back, and no one sees them ever again. Of course, those are all just different theories. After all, no one still knows if Mel's hole even exists or not. That deepest hole in the world we've mentioned before, the one that actually exists, is called Kola Super Deep Borehole, and it's human-made. It's covered and welded shut, and it sits among the abandoned ruins of one project site. It took people who made it around 20 years to reach that many miles under the surface. What stopped them at such depths are 2.7 billion-year-old rocks. They were at temperatures of about 356 degrees Fahrenheit, which was almost twice as hot as the team thought it would be. A hole this deep may seem like something from horror movies, but here's something that will comfort you. It's just 9 inches in diameter. That means you can't just wander around and accidentally fall inside of it, which, you have to admit, makes it a bit less scary after all. But many locals are still very afraid of it and are not comfortable with this hole. Many of them claim they hear terrifying screams at night coming out of it. If you decide to enter Krubera Cave, one of the deepest ones on the Earth, know that it could take days or even weeks to reach the bottom. This massive cave complex is located in Georgia, and it goes over a mile under the surface. It even got the nickname of being the Everest among other cave systems. The cave system looks really scary. Imagine going down there. But it's also home to a fascinating diversity of wildlife. There's also a basin filled with water at its bottom. The Berkeley Pit is a toxic hole. It's a former open-pit copper mine located in the western part of the United States. The hole is a mile long and half a mile wide. It's 1,780 feet deep. which is taller than the Empire State Building, and nearly half of it is filled with heavily acidic water. It has a similar level of acidity to gastric acid or lemon juice. This pit is full of dangerous chemicals and heavy metals. The water at the surface is red because of all those heavy metals that float around, like breadcrumbs in this poisonous soup. This soup has ended the lives of many birds that tried to land in the water at some point. If you want, you can even go there, pay the ticket, and check the pit out from a safe distance. It's a perfect day. It's not cloudy, the sun is out, and you're in the tropics, swimming in the sea. The water is crystal clear. So clear, it seems like you could see the bottom of where you're swimming. You look down and all you can see is darkness. The bottom is deep down below you, and if your imagination runs wild, you'll see giant sea monsters coming from down there right away. And that's how it feels to be above Dean's Blue Hole. It's nearly circular at the surface, but if you dive a bit deeper, it suddenly widens into a 4 times wider cavern. It's located on Long Island in the Bahamas, and it goes 663 feet below the surface, which makes it the second deepest hole in the world. It's a sinkhole filled with salt water that has an entrance below the water level. Such sinkholes can form in different processes. For instance, when rainwater soaks through fractures of limestone bedrock directly onto the water table. And in the case of this pit, the sea level has changed too. It got higher compared to, let's say, the Ice Age from 15,000 years ago. This one is Mount Baldy Sinkhole in Indiana. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon. A woman named Erin was on Mount Baldy, just finishing her scientific study of wind speeds. She was happy with how things were going, but suddenly, a bad hunch erased the smile off her face. She turned around and saw a man in his swim trunks. He was desperately clawing at the sand. "He's right here!" he yelled, while his wife was near him, panicking and in shock. Their 6-year-old son had disappeared, simply vanished down a hole. Erin didn't see any sign of an opening. She saw no upturned sand, which you'd expect to see if a person had just dug a hole. More and more people were coming to help, and someone called 911. She couldn't believe that something like that could happen. She thought their son was just hiding somewhere around, waiting to jump out and surprise them. So she went home. But later, she saw it on the news. The rescue team had managed to save their son. They found him 11 feet under the surface of a dune, and it was a complete shock for her. We're in such an advanced era when the robotic arms of spaceships scoop sand on Mars and then tell us its chemistry. And here, you can take a simple walk to the beach and still end up surprised by such geologic mysteries, like a hole that appears out of nowhere. Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory looks like a hole you'd see in some scary science fiction movies. This Antarctic research station is located at the South Pole and 3 times as large as the world's tallest building. This enormous hole made of metal and ice is frozen and isolated, and it reaches depths of around 8,200 feet. Scientists hope to use it to understand neutrino particles better, and through that, learn more about dark matter. It's the mysterious substance that makes up almost 30% of the universe. No one can see it directly, but scientists assume it's there. They believe it affects the movements of stars and galaxies.
Eridu, a megacity older than the first known civilization and older than the pyramids of Giza, was buried in the sands of the Mesopotamian desert for over 2,000 years. Now, scientists have made a discovery that changes what we know about the ancient city. They found over 4,000 canals around Eridu that brought water to more than 700 farms where people worked between the 6th and the early 1st millennium BCE. Now, Eridu was founded around 5400 BCE and was the city of the first kings and history's first city according to the Sumerian king list, an ancient text on a clay tablet. Ancient Sumerians believed that deities created this city when they decided to settle on Earth. Eridu plays such a big role in Sumerian myths and legends that, at some point, People used to think it was just a mythical location. The most famous Eridu myth says that the skies got angry because humans were too noisy, so they decided to send a great flood to wipe them out. A new study showed that the Euphrates River served as the source of water for the entire city. The researchers mapped what remains of the ancient landscape and found a well-developed network of artificial irrigation canals. They discovered 200 large main canals pulling water from the Euphrates, and those canals fed another 4,000 smaller canals. The team used everything from satellite images and drone footage to soil analysis, old records, and remote sizing tech to map out the area. The 700 farms that used the water from the system were different in size, from about 5,000 square feet to over 200,000 square feet. The main canals were a little over a half-mile long, and some stretched more than 5 miles. The smaller canals could be as short as 32 feet. Rivers in Mesopotamia were the main water sources for farming, so ancient farmers had to learn how to guide water from the river to their fields. It all started with simple methods, like digging small canals, but over generations, they learned how to build massive canals up to 62 miles long. The Euphrates itself helped the farmers. Water was moving thanks to gravity down its elevated riverbanks, and natural breaks in the banks let it spill onto the land. Researchers aren't sure when each canal was in use, and it's unlikely that all 4,200 canals were active at the same time during that long period. Now, Eridu used to be an important religious and trade center because of its strategic location on the Persian Gulf. Its economy mostly had to do with fishing, thanks to the Euphrates River. Researchers found fishing nets and weights and whole bales of dried fish at the site. And there were even models of reed boats, the earliest physical evidence we have for constructed boats anywhere. The city was thriving until people abandoned it around the year 600 BCE, and scientists still aren't sure why they did it. The local residents, plus the visiting pilgrims and merchants, had just exhausted all the resources of the land. They had to let it rest several times before abandoning the city for good. It happened when the Euphrates changed its course, and they lost their main source of water. Now, many centuries later, in 1854, a British official was on a mission to this area to check out a remote place that had a bunch of mounds called tells, which are piles of debris left behind by ancient human settlements. At first, Taylor wasn't impressed. He had been hoping to find something big, maybe statues, ancient writing, or ruins of palaces and temples. But with the brief time he had, all he found were things like walls, drains, stone platforms, and pieces of limestone columns decorated with tiny mosaic cones. But he didn't know that these boring mounds were hiding one of the oldest cities on Earth, Eridu. The people at the British Museum got interested in the finding, but the first full-scale excavations took place here only around a century later. The local Iraqi authorities got really interested in the excavations as they were hoping to find more about the earliest days of Mesopotamian history. So they focused on Mound 1, a massive tell as tall as an 8-story building. Soon they uncovered part of an unfinished step pyramid from the end of the 3rd millennium BCE. As they dug deeper, they found layers of human life going back in time. There were levels from the Uruk period, and even remains from a time before the Sumerians called proto-history. In those lower layers, they discovered multiple rebuilds of the Temple of Enki, the city's main deity. People rebuilt this temple again and again for over 2,000 years. Every time the temple collapsed, they built a new one right on top. Each new version of the temple was bigger and more impressive than the last. From the middle of the 4th millennium BCE, these temple buildings became massive, more advanced than anything else humans had built up to that point. The city in Eridu was also becoming more complex, with clear social classes. Eventually, they stopped rebuilding the temple and put up a step pyramid on top of the ruins. Even though Eridu faded, it likely stayed important as a religious site. Archaeologists found pottery from the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE during excavations, although there were no signs of houses. The Sumerians were an innovative civilization, as you can tell. By 1500 BCE, they invented the cedar plow, a tool that let farmers plow and plant seeds at the same time, using animals like oxen to pull it. This gear even came with instructions. The Sumerian Farmer's Almanac gave farmers advice on how to grow more crops with proper tilling and irrigation. These smart farming tricks helped feed more people, which led to larger cities, an organized ruling system, and more focus on religion. And as their cities expanded, so did their work in writing, math, and spiritual life. 5,000 years ago, the Sumerians had already produced cuneiform, one of the first writing systems in history. So another recent find from the same part of the world proves that bureaucracy existed already 4,000 years ago. Archaeologists found ancient administrative tablets in another ancient Sumerian city. These clay tablets are the oldest solid proof we have of the world's first empire, the Akkadian Empire. The tablets were inside a state archive building made of mud bricks, which had different rooms that acted like offices. Now, before this discovery, archaeologists didn't really understand how the first known empire in the world, the Akkadian Empire, worked behind the scenes. But now, thanks to the recent Gerso excavations, we have the first real and unambiguous evidence of the empire's administrative system. They tracked everything – deliveries, spending, and inventory, from fish to sheep to grains, fabric, and even gems. The tablets also include population records, with names and jobs of men, women, and kids, an ancient version of a census. From these records, scientists found out that women played a key role in Akkadian society. Some women had powerful positions, like high priestesses. The tablets also show a wide range of jobs, from skilled workers like stonecutters to people with simpler roles like temple floor sweepers. Some even included building blueprints, field layouts, and canal maps, proving that the empire had serious organization and planning. Eventually, the city rebelled and gained its independence, and the Akkadian Empire's 150-year rule ended. Now, researchers are carefully cleaning and translating the tablets to fully understand what they say. These new finds will replace older, incomplete ideas about the empire and give us a way more accurate picture of how Akkadian power and the ruling system actually worked.
You lie down facing the scorching sun in the middle of the desert when suddenly you smell something extremely foul. You try to crawl to the source to see if maybe someone there can help you, but all you see is a large hole in the middle of nowhere. You crawl there and stick your head down the hole. You hear something really faint down there, but it's too dark to see anything. Still, the foul smell tickles your nostrils. You turn away in disgust and stand up to get a better view of it. The hole is roughly 100 feet in diameter, with nothing around it. You've been wandering around the desert for days and just ran out of food and water, but far away, you see what looks like a small hut. You walk there for another couple of hours until you reach the outskirts of a village. A local man riding a camel tells you that you're in the Al-Mara province in Yemen's eastern region, which is quite close to Oman. He immediately takes you to his mud hut, feeds you, and gives you some water. Feeling refreshed and full, you ask the local about the hole in the desert floor. His eyes sink in and his face grows pale. He grabs you by your sleeve in silence, throws you out of his hut, and slams the door shut. You try to knock on his door once more, but he ignores you. Out ahead is the village market, where you could surely get some answers from people. You head over there, and everyone starts staring at you as if you're some kind of threat. They sense something's off about you. You put on your hood and make your way to a merchant. While you purchase some food, you ask the seller about the hole, but he refuses to sell you anything. He even pushes you off to the pathway. You make your way to another vendor and ask about the hole. At first, he's reluctant to tell you anything, but after you buy a few items from his shop, he finally concedes. He takes you to a small inn and seats you down. He tells you to keep your voice low when talking about it. He then orders a beverage for you and begins explaining everything he knows about the hole. Legends have it that the well of Barhut, which is in Hadramaut, is a cursed place, a prison for spirits. He claims that any object that goes near it eventually disappears. The server comes back with 2 refreshing drinks, and the man quickly stops talking. As soon as the server leaves, he resumes telling you about the well. The reason why people were avoiding you when you mentioned the well was because it's believed that it brought bad luck to anyone who was near it. They were even able to feel it through you. The man tells you that he doesn't believe in such superstitions, but you want to find out more. At night, you head back to the well to find out if what he said was true. You sit down next to it and concentrate all your senses. It's quiet, nothing but the desert wind brushing against the sand. You hear something that sounds like a whisper coming from the hole, as if calling you to go inside. You get up from your meditation and walk towards the hole. The sound gets louder, but you still can't make anything of it. You stick your head down the hole to listen while holding your breath, but it just sounds like gibberish. The next day, you get some rope and pikes and wait till nightfall to prepare for the next step, descending down the hole. Nighttime comes again, and you set up the ropes and tie them around a tree. You climb down while holding the rope with one hand and a torch with the other, and scale down. You try to breathe through your mouth, but you start to feel like you need to catch deeper breaths the lower you go. The hole is believed to be around 850 feet deep, but you were only able to go down around 20. You didn't expect it to be that deep. You start climbing back up, but you decide to drop the torch into the hole to see how far it goes. You see the flame getting smaller and smaller as it disappears into the darkness. Maybe the man was right, just village folklore about something they can't explain. Scientists claim that the hole is millions of years old and has practically no ventilation. Even though it's been around for such a long time, it remains as mysterious today as it's always been. You're walking in Siberia, looking out for some reindeer, when suddenly you hear a loud explosion from the distance. All of your reindeer scatter around, and you're too much in a frenzy to collect them. You run to the source of the blast and find a huge crater in an area you just passed through. In August 2020, a massive hole was discovered in Siberia, Russia, being around 100 feet deep and around 65 feet wide. The local residents and researchers were stunned to find it there. This is the 9th hole documented in the region since 2013. You call the local authorities, and a huge team of scientists arrive with weird-looking scientific equipment. They claim this crater is the biggest one they've seen so far. Most of these craters were found by accident when people went on non-scientific outings by helicopter or by hunters and herders. Scientists aren't able to wrap their heads around it, but they knew exactly where to start. Permafrost, the thing that covers 2/3 of the whole country's territory. Scientists believe that by studying the permafrost, which contains certain chemicals, we can find out why these craters are popping out. Samples of the craters contain a lot of chemicals, but most notably, methane. Scientists took plenty of samples of the frozen soil from the ground and the ice. They had to descend down the crater to collect most of them. And within 2 years, these craters end up turning into lakes. According to their studies, the gases, which are mainly made up of methane, accumulate in the upper layers of the permafrost, and they can come both from the deep layers of the earth and those close to the surface. These gases end up getting trapped in the frost as they accumulate, creating enough pressure to burst through the frozen ground. They claim that these giant holes are a result of the growing temperatures. But that's just one theory. They're still not really sure how they could have formed. But because most of these craters form in remote areas of the Arctic and take years to shape, no one really talks about them. You're fast asleep in the city of Fukuoka, Japan. At around 5 a.m., you hear a loud explosion and feel the ground shake. Japan is prone to earthquakes and tsunamis, so you're prepared for the worst. But the ground isn't rumbling, and the building isn't shaking anymore. You check the power, and nothing. The whole apartment and neighborhood is completely dark. You look far out from the balcony and see a huge hole in the middle of a 5-lane road. You leave the building and join the crowd gathering outside. The hole is about 65 feet deep, and it swallowed everything around it. The traffic lights, sidewalks, and a bus stop are all gone. Even parts of buildings are destroyed, leaving the support beams still standing. The whole subway system is totally dysfunctional, and about 800 households are experiencing blackouts. Even the airport and subway had a bit of it. The local authorities evacuate the entire area in case more sinkholes or gas explosions occur. A few days later, it's all fixed. It only took the Japanese engineers and contractors 48 hours to fill it up, and a week to reopen the road to the public. The explosion might have been caused by some construction on a subway line, but the sinkhole is sinking again. People noticed that the road seemed to decline by about 3 inches in heavy traffic. But with quick maintenance, Japan can fix anything in the fastest way possible.
For over 3,000 years, no one knew this place even existed. And then, out of nowhere, archaeologists digging near Alexandria uncovered something absolutely shocking: a forgotten Egyptian city. This place is buried under Greek ruins, hiding secrets that could rewrite the history of pharaohs and their armies. And one of the artifacts, which looks like a simple wine jug, changed everything. We thought that we already placed all the important parts on the map of ancient Egypt: pyramids, Thebes, Luxor, Alexandria. But nope, the map just got an update. The new city was a big deal, and it's about 3,400 years old. It's just been discovered at the site called Kom el Nugus. This place is located west of Alexandria and tucked between the Mediterranean and a saltwater lake called Lake Mariut. This discovery raised a few eyebrows. Scientists thought that this place used to be empty and that it was only settled by the Greeks in about 332 BCE. But it turns out that people lived in Kom el Nugus way before that. When archaeologists were digging through Greek ruins, they started noticing something unexpected: mud brick walls. Yep, you know, the pyramid type. That's the kind Egyptians built during the New Kingdom. These mud bricks were made from mud, clay, sand, and straw. These ingredients were mixed with water and dried in the sun, not baked. Egyptians used them for thousands of years to build houses, temples, palaces, and yes, the pyramids. Of course, other civilizations did use mud brick too, but Egyptian mud brick is kinda quirky. They used straw that grew in their regions, layout styles, and mortar. That's what helped the experts realize that Egyptians used to hang out in Kom el Nugus. That alone raised eyebrows, and then they found more: an entire street layout, buried structures, and even a temple built by Ramses the Great himself. His name speaks for itself. This guy was one of the most famous pharaohs in all of Egyptian history. He ruled ancient Egypt for 60 years, fought huge battles, and just loved building tons of stuff like that temple. People loved him so much that later pharaohs literally pretended to be him or wrote his name on their buildings. That's when archaeologists realized that they weren't looking at some dusty mud bricks of a tiny village. That's an entire buried city. They immediately started digging more. Turns out the whole place wasn't random. It was built with great care. The streets had drains to stop rainwater from damaging the soft mud-brick walls. There were also small tomb chapels with writings about soldiers. This suggests this place might have been the military base, and that changes a lot. In ancient Egypt, when the military showed up, there must have been a reason. So what was it? Protection? Conquest? Control of something important? In the case of this city, it was probably about wine, water, and trade on the edge of the desert. What's even crazier is that we still don't know just how big it was. The team has only uncovered part of it so far. There could be fortifications, warehouses, administrative buildings, or even more religious or royal structures waiting underground. We also don't know what this town was called in ancient times. That name is still buried. But it might be uncovered someday, maybe inside a wall, maybe on a scroll, maybe on another broken jug. One of those already turned out to be a mind-blower. A chunk of a ceramic jar, called an amphora, had a royal seal pressed into it, and that seal bore the name Meritaton. Princess Meritaton wasn't just anyone. She was the eldest daughter of Queen Nefertiti and the older sister of King Tutankhamun. Yes, that's right. Both Nefertiti and King Tut were involved here. All that was about a century before Ramses the Great built one of his temples here. Looks like the city was founded back in the days of another pharaoh, the pharaoh Akhenaten, husband of Queen Nefertiti, father of Princess Meritaton, and future king Tutankhamun. That guy, Akhenaten, was a bit of a wild card. He was the type who really gets weird about one of his interests. He tried to completely change Egypt's religion, forcing everyone to worship the sun disk called Aten instead of the usual deities. He basically told all Egypt that all their mythology was wrong, and from now on, there will be no more Osiris, no more Thoth or Set. Just raw sunlight only, people. That's known in history as the Amarna period. And he went all in, changed his name, built an entirely new capital city called Amarna in the middle of the desert, redesigned temples, rewrote hymns, and even banned traditional religious imagery. Even the art got wild at the time. People started getting elongated heads, belly rolls, and all that humanity and vulnerability carved into stone. It was deliberately weird. He wanted to show the family not as perfect gods, but as human vessels of divine light. Everyone had to awkwardly smile and play along because he was the pharaoh after all. The wackiest part is that after his rule, his son, Tutankhamun, reversed all the sun disk-related stuff. He literally changed his name from Tutankhaten, which means living image of the Aten, the sun disk, to Tutankhamun, which means living image of Amun, one of the great older deities. King Tut brought back the old deities, reopened the temples, and erased as much of Akhenaten's legacy as possible. Looks like his family didn't really like the sun cult after all. Meanwhile, this discovered wine jug shows that the city was probably active, thriving with life during Akhenaten's times. That's huge. Up until now, there was no clear evidence that his radical ideas and projects extended all the way to the north. The jug also shows that vineyards and wine production reached all the way to the north in ancient Egypt. Wine really was a huge deal, worthy of placing a military base here. Princess Meritaton most likely used this jug. Just like with her brother, she was born into the sun and named after it. Her name, also spelled Meritaten, meant beloved of the Aten. As the eldest daughter of Pharaoh and his queen, born right into the middle of radical religious changes, she was raised to perform the future queen's duties. From her earliest years, she walked in temples alongside her mother Nefertiti, shaking the sistrum in solemn rituals. She was there when Akhenaten established his capital city, Amarna. He clearly loved his family. Meritaton's face was etched into its stone walls more than anyone else. In every temple, in every sacred scene, her figure appears, revered. Things get foggy in history after her father passed away. The throne wobbled. King Tut was very young, only 9 years old when he had to take new duties. Meritaton seemed to have been a brief step between her father and her younger brother. She married someone called Smenkhkare. History isn't even sure who that mysterious man was. Could have been a puppet, a phantom king in a crumbling dynasty. May have even been her brother. Whatever the truth was, these two took power and ruled together for a while. Meritaton got the title of the Great Royal Wife, a title of immense power. But Smenkhkare was a very short-lived ruler. He passed away just in about a year. There are some speculations among historians that Meritaton was the actual ruler, the informal female pharaoh, because her brother was too young. Some theories say that she raised Tutankhamun and became a sort of queen regent, mentoring the child who would be used to restore the old order. But all this is unconfirmed. It's very hard for historians to find information about that time because the Amarna period was later condemned. The successors wanted to wipe away Akhenaten's heresy and everything attached to it. This included Meritaten. So even if she ruled, even if she mothered Tut, they tried to bury her in the sands of history. In any case, Perhaps this new uncovered city will tell us more about the mysteries of the Amarna period, one of the most chaotic periods of ancient Egypt.
I bet you've never heard of the legendary oasis of Zerzura. This ancient city is said to be hidden somewhere deep in the Sahara Desert, and its discovery could mean unimaginable riches and untold secrets. According to an anonymous 15th century Arabic guide, the key to unlocking the city lies in the beak of a bird carved on the city gate. Zerzura might not be as popular as Machu Picchu or the pyramids, but that just makes it more mysterious. Legend has it that Zerzura is built around this big oasis somewhere in the desert west of the Nile. Apparently, it's made out of white stone and has all these luxurious houses and gold decorations. The story goes that a scribe wrote down the account of a traveler who stumbled upon Zerzura while looking for his lost camel. At one point in his journey, the man got caught up in a sandstorm, where he got separated from the rest of his group. The traveler kept wandering in the desert for days, and then, out of nowhere, two men showed up and guided him to the city of Zerzura. The traveler described this city as an oasis filled with little birds and made out of pure white stonework. The city is also said to be guarded by giants. In 1835, an English Egyptologist named John Gardner Wilkinson mentioned the city in one of his books. He spoke to a man from Egypt who found the city by accident after days of wandering through the desert. He mentioned some ruins, unusual stonework, and a large oasis surrounded by palm trees. The man even gave some instructions on how the city could be found, indicating that it might be in the western desert of Egypt. But here's the kicker. Even though a group of explorers went out to find Zerzura, they didn't succeed. At the same time, they did stumble upon a bunch of previously unknown oases. In the early 1900s, numerous expeditions were sent to find the city, including one with a fleet of Ford Model A trucks. But, alas, none were successful. Others say Zerzura did exist at one point, but not anymore. It's possible it was swallowed by the desert. It's believed that back in the day, the Sahara Desert was actually green. Scientists even found traces of ancient rivers that flowed through the area 100,000 years ago, creating green corridors across the desert. But Zerzura might have never been real to begin with. Maybe it only existed in the minds of people, a figment of their imagination as they were struggling in the African desert. For thousands of years, people have been obsessed with the hunt for another lost city, Atlantis. But if this place really existed, where on Earth, or under the sea, could it be? According to Plato, Atlantis was an actual place, and it was supposedly located somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, near the Strait of Gibraltar. But how did this mythical city become synonymous with a perfect, paradise-like society? Well, you can thank Ignatius Donnelly for that. The American writer published a book in 1882 where he outlined 13 hypotheses about the existence of Atlantis. Donnelly truly believed that this lost city was where ancient humans lived in peace and joy for centuries. Donnelly even thought that Atlantis was the original source of many ancient civilizations around the world. And if we just followed Plato's clues, we could totally find Atlantis. Sounds like a treasure hunt, right? What inspired Donnelly to go on this quest in the first place, you might ask? Apparently, an amateur archaeologist discovered the city of Troy, using Homer's The Iliad as a guide. Well, if Troy was real, then why not Atlantis? Back in the day, some people believed that America was the legendary Atlantis. Columbus really stirred up some excitement when he brought back news about the New World to Europe. But the real hunt for Atlantis didn't really start until the 20th and 21st centuries. Some people tried to connect the dots between a volcanic eruption on the island of Santorini and the destruction of Minoan settlements. But in 2018, a team of investigators claimed they had nailed it, announcing they had discovered concrete proof that Atlantis had existed. What was their evidence, you ask? A series of mysterious circles in a national park in Spain. But the circles turned out to be nothing more than experimental ponds for studying zooplankton. Let's face it, there's no real evidence that Plato's lost city of Atlantis actually existed. But it doesn't make searching for it any less exciting, does it? The Fountain of Youth isn't a lost city per se, but it is another mythical location that many have claimed to have stumbled upon over the years. Long ago, people were obsessed with the idea of living forever, or at least extending their lives as much as possible. Each culture had its own wild story, like the Greeks talking about a magic fountain that let people live longer, or Alexander the Great finding a river of paradise that could heal the wounded. Japanese legends spoke of hot springs that could make you young again, while the Caribbean locals talked about the restorative powers of the water in one of their own mystical lands. Explorers searched far and wide for these magical waters, but nothing. Probably the most famous of all was the story of the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon, who thought he'd found it in Florida. Now, Ponce de Leon was quite a character. He sailed with Columbus and became an important figure in the area now known as the Dominican Republic. He found gold in Puerto Rico and even became the island's administrator. But when the ruler of Spain decided to replace him in his duties, he got upset and decided to explore Florida, looking for gold and the elusive Fountain of Youth. He explored the Bahamas, but sadly, he didn't find any gold or magic water. He did, however, make his way to Florida. He explored the coast and even discovered the Gulf Stream. Unfortunately, his last expedition didn't go well, and he was wounded. But the legend of him searching for the Fountain of Youth lived on. Even though historians don't think he was really looking for the Fountain of Youth, thousands of people visit the Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park every year to try the sulfur-smelling water. It's the oldest attraction in Florida, which has been around since the 17th century. Some say the water has unusual properties, but I'll leave that up to you to decide after you visit this place. Norse mythology has its own mysterious land called Thule. It's said to be somewhere between Scandinavia and Iceland, where the sun barely shines and the cold bites hard. The folks there survive on a diet of millet, herbs, fruits, and roots, washed down with a grain and honey brew. As for its exact location, scholars can't seem to agree on it to this day. The legendary ancient Greek explorer Pytheas was said to be the first to stumble upon Thule during his quest for tin mines. He sailed his way up north, passing by Scotland, and after 6 long days of sailing, he reached Thule. The people there, according to Pytheas, were quite primitive, but that's no surprise since they were just simple farmers living off the land. They showed Pytheas where the sun set on the shortest day of the year. They also told him that in winter, the sun never rose at all, and in summer, there was no night. For many years, historians have been debating the true identity of this mythical land of Thule. Some say it's Iceland, while others claim it's Norway. A little bit of progress has been made recently with the help of a team of researchers. If their findings are correct, Thule might be the elusive island of Smola. That's farther south than any of the Norwegian islands that were on the list of contenders. It may be too soon to celebrate, but it does look like Thule has finally been found.
You are lost deep within the jungle in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. There are strange noises all around you, and to make it worse, the sun is setting. Soon, you'll be alone in the middle of an unknown rainforest. Guess it was a pretty bad idea to come looking for El Dorado on your own, wasn't it? You keep walking as fast as you can, when suddenly, wait! What's this you're seeing? It looks like large stairways made out of stone. This definitely doesn't look natural, so you take a picture. Maybe you didn't strike gold, but you might have just found something relevant. Congratulations! You found Akamtun, a long-lost Mayan city, hidden 37 miles into the jungle. The name literally translates to stone column. Stone was probably in at the time, so these guys used a lot of it to build their pyramids, houses, and even ball courts. If you ever thought that Europeans invented ball games, think twice. Mayans loved to play ball games for recreational purposes. Akamtun is part of a series of other long-lost Mayan cities that are being discovered with the help of new technology nowadays. We'll talk more about the other ones in a jiffy. Perhaps the biggest surprise of this one is that it was surrounded by wetlands, which is why the city was built on high ground. The city was monumental, covering an area of over 120 acres. That would be as big as 90 football fields right next to each other. Scientists have found proof that Akamtun had pyramids of up to 49 feet high, and that it was likely an important social hub between 250 and 1000 CE. This is definitely a game changer. But lost Mayan cities began to be unearthed in the 19th century. Modern technologies, such as LiDAR imaging, help archaeologists see through dense canopies of the forests. This means that people don't really have to risk getting lost in the tropical jungle like you did at the beginning of this video. LiDAR works sort of like an X-ray. It sends out laser beams that can detect any signs of ruins or ancient constructions. According to space archaeologist Sarah Parchak, satellite imagery has been a key player in discovering ancient cities in South America, Egypt, and other places. Sarah herself spends most of her days scouring images for any signs of where there could have been cities long ago. She says that more often than not, what happens is that ruins are covered by vegetation, soil, or sand, which makes them super tricky to find. But thanks to these awesome tools, scientists also made the huge discovery of ancient Mayan causeways, which spread throughout old Mayan territories. I mean, take a look at these roadways. You'd expect to see ruins like this in places such as Portugal, England, or the United States. I'm talking about 130 feet wide roads painted white to help travelers journey through the nighttime. Scientists recently unearthed a 110-mile network of roads such as these, and they think this dates back to before the first registered Mayan highways we've known so far. These roadways, which sometimes ran over the swampy ground and were even elevated at times, are being called the world's first superhighways. Even if there is no registry of animal-powered vehicles, it's believed that the Maya used them to travel around a network of possible 964 settlements. They were built like a huge spiderweb, and from what archaeologists have gathered, this huge system of roads worked to connect a big system of economic and social interactions between Mayan cities. This completely debunks the traditional idea that the Mayan pre-classic period, which dates back to 2000 BCE, was made of small, tribal settlements. Imagine the manpower and engineering ability you need to muster to build something close to these white highways. Scientists believe that these causeways were built pretty much the same way as the Mayans built their pyramids, with a mixture of mud and quarry stone. Oh, and using several layers of limestone to make them white. That's pretty cool, right? But let's take a few steps back for a moment to get some context. The Mayans were one of the biggest pre-Columbian civilizations living in the Americas. Until now, experts believe that at its apex, the Mayan civilization consisted of over 40 cities with a population of millions of people. That's a lot of folks. Their civilization spanned Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, and Belize. And they survived mainly on agriculture. The thing is, the Yucatan Peninsula was an extremely difficult place to grow crops. So the Mayans had to develop a complex irrigation system in most of their cities. They built a series of ceremonial buildings, pyramids, and plazas. The Mayans might have been keen pyramid builders, but they also developed an advanced astronomical system. With whatever ancient technology they had, they were able to predict the exact location of planets such as Venus and Mars, as well as the exact dates of eclipses. If you've ever seen examples of ancient Mayan cities, this is Tikal, located at the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, Tikal is believed to have been the capital of the ancient Mayan conquest state. At its height, it was comparable in importance to cities such as London or New York in today's world. It's composed of a series of complex monuments. The North Acropolis is one of Tikal's most ancient complexes of monuments. Built solely by human hands around 350 BCE, it served as the resting place of kings and chiefs. Its monuments are up to 200 feet high. Back in the day, the step pyramid temples were painted a beautiful red. Mayans loved that color. Today, of course, you'll only see the limestone. Then there's Chichen Itza. It's got one of the best preserved pyramids on Earth to date. Located in Mexico's Yucatan state, this Mayan city is well over 1,500 years old. At its peak, it was home to 35,000 people. The site covers 4 square miles of land. The highlight is El Castillo, a tremendous step-like temple standing 80 feet above ground. Its most peculiar feature is that it has 91 steps up each of its 4 sides, including the upper platform, which makes for 365 steps, the same number of days as the solar year. You can see that these folks were a pretty big deal, huh? That's why nobody can really understand what happened to them. There's a big lack of evidence on the decline of this almighty empire. What could have been the cause of their demise? Was it a drought? New research in 2017 did bring some new discoveries into the mix. Using data from a site at Ceibal, located at southwest of Tikal, scientists analyzed radiocarbon data from ceramics and archaeological excavations to extract new information about the unexpected demise of this great civilization. The information shows that instead of a sudden collapse, the Mayans most likely fell in waves of social instability and political crises. These events are believed to have deteriorated Mayan city centers and began causing the dispersion of the Mayan population. It's hard to pinpoint the exact causes, though. But hey, recent discoveries are shedding a big light on humanity's past. Not only about the Mayan Empire, but about other long-lost civilizations of South America. A major recent discovery in Brazil was done using satellite imaging technology and is also shocking scientists. Some images from near the Xingu River, also in the Amazon, suggest that cities of millions of people might have existed inside the jungle, way before our modern civilization ever existed. I mean, if this doesn't shock you, I don't know what will. Satellite imagery also detected a network of trenches dating back to 200 and 1200 CE in the Bolivian Amazon forest. These proofs suggest settlements that could have supported around 60,000 people right in the middle of the Amazon forest. When researchers from the University of Florida went on ground to check the satellite information, they were shocked to find several mounds that were accompanied by ditches and geoglyphs. Archaeologists also found remnants of carefully designed walls centered around plazas, much like the type of construction done by the ancient Mayans.
You know, a lot happened in the first millennium CE. Sure, we're talking about 1,000 years worth of human history. If you'll remember from school, you'll know it was the time of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. It was when humans saw the transition to the intense times of the Middle Ages. And some say it was the apex period of the Mayan civilization, all the way in Mesoamerica. But thanks to top-notch technological advancements, we can look at history a lot differently today. You see, archaeologists have found actual proof that the Mayan civilization may have started way before we think it did, and that since the beginning, their civilization was far from simple. To find out more about this, you'll have to tread deep into the Guatemalan rainforests. Are you down for the ride? Rainforests are dense and difficult to access. If you were an archaeologist, I'm betting you'd find them quite threatening as well. That's actually one of the reasons why we've been kept in the dark for so long when it comes to the truth about the Mayans. But take a look at this. You'd expect to see ruins like this in places like Portugal, England, or the United States. I'm talking about 130-foot wide roads, painted white to help travelers journey through the nighttime. For scale, these roads were about half the size of an American football field. Huge, huh? Scientists recently unearthed a 110-mile network of roads such as these, and they think this dates back to before the first registered Mayan ruins we've known so far. These roadways, which sometimes ran over swampy ground and were even elevated at times, are being called the world's first superhighways. Even if there is no registry of animal-powered vehicles, it's believed that the Maya used them to travel around a network of possibly 964 settlements. They were built like a huge spider web, and from what archaeologists have gathered, they worked as an implied system of economic and social interactions. This completely debunks the traditional idea that the Mayan pre-classic period, which dates back to 1000 to 350 BCE, was made of small tribal settlements. Imagine the manpower and engineering ability you need to muster to build something close to these white highways. Scientists believe that these causeways were built pretty much the same way as the Mayans built their pyramids. Oh, and if you're wondering about these gigantic pieces of architecture, don't worry, we'll talk about them in a bit. Now, so far, scientists believe that the roads were built with a mixture of mud and quarry stone. Oh, and using several layers of limestone, of course. Researchers were only able to find all of this out because of a new technology called LiDAR imaging. Do you know how we've used sonar technology to map out the ocean bed? Well, this is very similar to that. But instead of using sounds, we use laser systems. This mapping system allows researchers to see through and beyond the thick canopies of forests. It's like we have X-ray vision. This is definitely a game changer. But lost Mayan cities began to be unearthed in the mid-20th century, and since then, ruins from cities such as Tikal, Palenque, and Uxmal have been rediscovered. But let's take a few steps back for a moment to get some context. The Mayans were one of the biggest pre-Columbian civilizations living in the Americas. Until now, experts believe that, at its apex, the Mayan civilization consisted of over 40 cities with a population of millions of people. That's a lot of folks. Their civilization spanned Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, and Belize, and they survived mainly on agriculture. The thing is, the Yucatan Peninsula was an extremely difficult place to grow crops. So the Maya had to develop a complex irrigation system in most of their cities. They built a series of ceremonial buildings, pyramids, plazas, and even courts for playing ball. The Mayans might have been keen pyramid builders, but they also developed an advanced astronomical system. With whatever ancient technology they had, they were able to predict the exact location of planets, such as Venus and Mars, as well as the exact dates of eclipses. Now, let's take a look at some of their sites. This is Tikal. Located at the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, Tikal is believed to have been the capital of the ancient Mayan Empire. At its height, it was comparable in importance to such cities as London or New York in today's world. It is composed of a series of complex monuments. In total, the site has 12,000 buildings. The North Acropolis is Tikal's most ancient complex of monuments. Built solely by human hands around 350 BCE, it served as the resting place of kings and chiefs. Its monuments are up to 200 feet high. Back in the day, the step pyramid temples were painted a beautiful red. Mayans loved that color. Today, of course, you'll only see the limestone. We've said that the Mayans spread out through different countries, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that Chichen Itza is a 10-hour drive from Tikal today. There's no feud between the two, they were just different city centers, like New York and LA. It's got one of the best preserved pyramids on Earth to date. Located in Mexico's Yucatan state, this Mayan city is well over 1,500 years old. At its peak, it was home to 35,000 people. The site covers 4 square miles of land. The highlight is El Castilla, a tremendous step-like temple standing 80 feet above ground. Its most peculiar feature is that it has 91 steps up each of its 4 sides, including the upper platform, which makes for 365 steps, the same number of days as the solar year. Makes you go, Behold, the lost city of Palenque. Another important Maya city is believed to have hosted over 6,000 people at its peak. Archaeologists have made some unusual discoveries on this site. The most eccentric of them all makes us think of Indiana Jones and the Tomb Raider. One of the buildings in Palenque is believed to be the final resting place of the Red Queen of Palenque. She was believed to be the grandmother of the last Mayan king. In her honor, a huge monument was built to keep her body after her passing. The discovery of the tomb itself was already thrilling. Archaeologists found an ancient monument when digging at the site back in 1994. The first they saw was a room with a hidden door. Once they opened the door, they discovered an 8-foot-long corridor. At the end of this corridor was the queen's chamber, and inside was the mummy of the queen herself. They found her to be accompanied by her pearls, jade shells, and expensive rocks. But as the team explored the remains, they saw something strange. The room was filled with a red-colored powder. Researchers knew that the color red was important to the Mayan people, but they didn't understand why the queen was buried with this unknown substance. They took a sample back with them for further analysis and discovered that the red powder was cinnabar, a very dangerous mineral. This powder, when inhaled, can cause severe health damage to a person. The team concluded that this could only be a trap for anyone trying to steal her riches. Talk about curses, huh? One thing that has always troubled researchers is the lack of evidence on the decline of this almighty empire. What could have been the cause of their demise? Was it a drought? Some disease? New research in 2017 did shed some light on this issue. Using data from a site called Ciabal, located southwest of Tikal, scientists analyzed radiocarbon data from ceramics and archaeological excavations to extract new information about the unexpected passing of this great civilization. The information shows that instead of a sudden collapse, the Mayans most likely fell in waves of social instability and political crises. These events are believed to have deteriorated Mayan city centers and began causing the dispersion of the Mayan population. So, what's your take on the end of this story?
Back in December 2012, a lot of people were freaking out over the idea that the world might end in some catastrophic event. And it was all thanks to the famous Maya calendar. This ancient way of tracking time had been the subject of endless speculation. But one of its biggest mysteries was definitely an 819-day count found in some versions of the calendar. No one could explain why it was there or how it worked, until recently, when a group of researchers from Cambridge might have finally cracked the code. First things first, how does the Maya calendar work? So the system the Maya civilization used to track days was based on something we now call the calendar round. Think of it like 3 interlocking gears. These are 3 cycles working together. The first is a 365-day solar year, known as Hab. The second is a cycle of 20 names. And the third is a cycle of 13 numbers, which forms a 260-day sacred calendar, called Solkeen. Just like we'd say something like December 25th, 2025, they named their days based on how these 3 cycles lined up. For example, here we have the day 3 Manik and the 14th of the month Hop. It takes 52 years for the 3 cycles to align in the same way again. After that, the days start repeating. But this is where things start to get more complicated and mysterious. On some Mayan monuments, we have also found enigmatic inscriptions pointing to the existence of another cycle, the 819-day count. There are about 20 examples of these inscriptions, mostly found in places like Palenque and Yaxchilan in Mexico. So it didn't seem random at all, and this calendar must have been hiding a big secret. Early research showed that the 819-day cycle was represented by one of 4 colors and the cardinal directions associated with them. Black was tied to the west, red to the east, white to the north, and yellow to the south. Researchers also discovered that this period of time could be broken down into 3 smaller cycles. One of 9 days, one of 7 days, and one of 13 days. Multiply them together, and you'd get 819 days. Pretty cool, but Why did they do that? This color scheme and the 3 cycles seemed like a basic level of interpretation, and experts were pretty sure its real purpose was still hidden from us. Another thing researchers noticed is that this strange count of days was mostly shown using a Y glyph, followed by a number. But in some cases, they also added a glyph representing Kawil. This was a powerful Maya deity, often associated with creation and lightning. He was usually symbolized by a torch coming out of his forehead, representing the spark of life. But in the 90s, a study suggested that when Kawil's inscription showed smoke and fire coming from his forehead, it could actually represent the planets Jupiter or Saturn, or maybe even both. Wait, that means that the 819 days count could be linked to both planets in some way. From there, research focused on figuring out what that link might be. The first conclusion is that this calendar might have helped the Maya track the movements of those planets in some way. Then they started noticing something interesting. These cycles could be specifically tied to the synodic periods of Jupiter and Saturn. By synodic periods, we mean the time it takes for a celestial body, like a planet, to return to the same or nearly the same position as seen from Earth. While this possibility was pretty exciting, something didn't quite add up. Each planet moves very differently, and trying to fit multiple planets into an 819-day span just didn't seem to work. In other words, this 4-part color-coded calendar system was simply too short to align perfectly with the synodic periods of the visible planets. So it looks like we're back to square one. This mystery had people scratching their heads for ages, until 2023, when specialists realized they might have been looking at it all wrong. Researchers actually needed to shift their perspective. Instead of seeing this system as 819 days, they needed to consider the number as representing timelines. And this period of time could be just a small part of a much, much bigger calendar. You see, as we said earlier, this cycle seemed to track the period when a planet became visible to people on Earth. To prove that these 819 cycles were timelines, not actual days, researchers needed a planet that could serve as a starting point to back up their theory. In this case, it was Mercury. And there's a pretty simple reason for that. Mercury's synodic period is 117 days, which fits perfectly into the calendar count. I mean, if you take 1819 and divide by 117, you get the number 7. So, Mercury is the only visible planet whose synodic cycle fits neatly into this period as whole numbers. Perfect. Now they had a solid starting point. From there, they needed to expand the calendar by increasing its length to 20 periods of 819 days. Suddenly, a pattern emerges. And just like that, all the synodic cycles of the planets fit perfectly into the system. For example, Saturn's synodic period from 378 days lines up perfectly after 6 819-day cycles. Venus aligns every 5 cycles, Jupiter every 19 cycles, and Mars, which takes the longest, needs 20 cycles. In other words, it takes about 45 years for Mars to align with the synodic periods of all visible planets. So, this is how researchers determined that the ancient civilization wasn't referring to days, but rather to timelines. The Maya astronomers came up with this count as part of a larger calendar system of 20 periods. But then a question comes up. Why was studying the synodic period so important to the Maya? Well, we don't have super specific answers about this mysterious calendar yet. But what we can say for sure is that the Maya truly believed in the powerful influence of the cosmos on daily life. So maybe they wanted to analyze how the movements of all the visible planets lined up with their other calendars. Of course, this system is just one part of the Maya's amazing and advanced understanding of astrology. And it wasn't just about using astrological cycles for planting and harvesting. they also had crazy specific knowledge, like how to predict solar eclipses. Archaeologists believe the Maya connection to the stars is reflected in the ruins of their world. Take the famous pyramid in the ancient city of Chichen Itza, located in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. If you look closely at the base of its staircase, you will see a snake's head carved in stone. But here's the coolest part. During the spring and fall equinoxes, when day and night are exactly the same length, the sun casts sharp, triangular shadows on the staircase. It creates the illusion of a snake slithering down the steps. Another example of how they use their knowledge of astronomy in their temples is in Tikal, Guatemala. Built around year 1 of the Common Era, this pyramid is considered one of the Mayas' earliest astronomical complexes. And its alignment and orientation allowed them to track and calculate solstices and equinoxes with incredible precision. The Maya were skilled sky watchers. Just like we have modern-day high-tech observatories with round domes, they had something similar. Meet El Caracol. The name means snail in Spanish and refers to the spiral staircase inside the tower. Built around 906 Common Era, it was the perfect place to observe all the changes in the sky and track the movements of the sun, moon, planets, and stars. Unlike us today, with our telescopes, satellites, and advanced tools, the Maya relied entirely on naked eye observation, and that makes their achievements even more incredible. Whoa! It's a huge flying island right above your head. In the era of AI, you may think it's nothing but a neural network video, but let me tell you that first, it's very much real. 2, if you want, you can as well visit it. It may even hold the key to the El Dorado secret. This place is called Roraima, and it's actually not an island at all. It's a mountain. Due to a number of factors, we get this vision of an island floating somewhere above us. But it's all about the flat top this mountain has. There's no standard peak, so it looks flat and the thick clouds get blended into the skies, thus creating this optical illusion. Despite the advancements in satellite technology and affordable air travel, there are still few places on Earth that feel truly uncharted. Like Mount Roraima is one of them. It's been around for almost 2 billion years, and it's one of the oldest formations on our planet. For comparison, dinosaurs appeared somewhere around 240 million years ago. Some scientists believe that this area used to be a part of the supercontinent called Gondwana land. And back then, it wasn't yet a mountain. When the supercontinent split apart, the erosion created this magnificent tabletop mountain. But what's interesting about this place is not the age, but the fact that it still looks prehistoric. It's almost untouched. The reason for that is late exploration of this part of South America. By the way, we still discover new flora and fauna species living there every year. For a mountain, it's relatively short, only 9,220 feet. There are cities located at a higher pitch above sea level, say La Paz in Bolivia, whose elevation is 11,940 feet. So people could be living in the area of Mount Roraima too, despite its hard-to-get location. But there's a twist to it. The Pemon people are the original inhabitants of this region, and they have an incredibly rich tradition of myths. For instance, their mythology features deities that live on the Tepui, which are flat-topped mountains found in the grasslands. These mountains are considered sacred and are off-limits to the living since they're believed to be the dwelling places of ancestor spirits known as Mawari. So, there are traditions that restrict living in this area, but still, some sources claim that local communities do dwell there. But, obviously, modern problems lie not only in the spirits, but in very much limited job opportunities there. However, guided tours are actually available. So what will you see if you ever dare to visit this place? At the base of the mountain lies an evergreen rainforest featuring trees that range in height from 82 to 150 feet. with some specimens reaching up to 200 feet. Some of them are endemic for sure, meaning that it's the only place in the world where you can find them. Like, you can find orchids as large as a medium-sized tree. It's not a surprise because due to the remoteness of this place, species here may have followed a completely different evolutionary trail, unlike most of the flora and fauna on our planet. Next, you have all the chances to stumble upon a waterfall at the base of Roraima that's been flowing for millions of years. Fun fact, there are no rivers on Roraima summit, but the rainfall seeping through the porous rocks create this incredible view. All combined together make it look like some lost world, right? By the way, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was inspired by Tepui, these tabletop mountains, when he was writing his The Lost World novel. Yep, it's not only Sherlock he was famous for. Among these natural wonders, Roraima stands out as the most accessible Tepui. There are more similar formations, but they're way less trek-friendly. Yeah, amongst other mountains, Roraima may be the easiest to get to, but still, it is very hard to get there, even taking into account all the modern technologies. So, how did the discovery happen? Hard to say for sure, but there is a theory backed up by official records. Back in the 16th century, here was this Sir Walter Raleigh. Look at his fancy collar and mustache. He was one of the most important people during the Elizabethan period. In 1594, he got to know about a great golden city near the Caroni River. That idea stuck in his mind. Maybe it was something like a get-rich-quick scheme for him. Anyways, 1 year later, he went to explore what is now Guyana and eastern Venezuela, and he described precisely Mount Roraima. On March 22, 1595, an English fleet led by Walter Raleigh showed up off the coast of Trinidad. Raleigh tried to make nice with the Spanish settlers there by trading and even inviting them aboard his ships for some entertainment. After a few drinks, the Spaniards opened up about a person having some particular activities in Guyana, sharing insights about the land's geography and the treasures they believed were hidden inland. Fast forward to April 7th, Raleigh pulled off a surprise attack on the town of San Jose and managed to capture this very person. After squeezing him for information, Raleigh declared his own plan to head into Guyana on a quest for the legendary Golden City. Since his ships couldn't navigate the narrow channels of the Orinoco Delta, Raleigh had his carpenters modify one of them, likely a galleass, to only draw 5 feet of water. This ship could carry 60 men, while another 40 were split among smaller boats. Progress was slow as they navigated through the delta, getting lost in what Raleigh described as a labyrinth of rivers. Eventually, they made their way to the Caño Manamo, and then into the main Orinoco River. A bit further upstream, where the Orinoco meets the Caroni, Raleigh encountered a native chief named Topiawari, and they hit it off. Topiawari revealed that his people had been pushed out of inland Guyana by a fierce tribe from the west. This fed into the prevailing belief, shared by both the Spanish and Raleigh, that El Dorado was home to runaway Incas from Peru. Topiawari also mentioned that the invading tribe was rich in gold, claiming that their nearest town, just a 4-day trek south, was the source of gold plates that were being traded far and wide. But he hinted that even finer treasures lay deeper in the land. Raleigh then made his way to the mouth of the Caroni, but strong currents halted any further progress. He sent out 2 scouting groups on land, while he led a 3rd one. They unearthed a few shiny stones that they eagerly dug out of the ground, but most turned out to be worthless. They learned that a massive lake about 40 miles wide lay at the head of the Caroni, filled with alluvial gold. However, with no way to move forward and the Orinoco's waters rising, Raleigh had to call off the expedition, hoping to come back when conditions were better. It wasn't until 1616, over 20 years later, that Raleigh got the go-ahead from James I for a second try in Guyana. He assured the king he could retrieve a lot of gold from a mine near the Caroni that he had heard about on his earlier trip. James specifically ordered him not to clash with the Spanish, who were still controlling the Orinoco area. When Raleigh arrived in South America, he stayed on the ship while sending Lawrence Kemmys and a team to look for the mine. For reasons that remain unclear, Kemmys ended up attacking and capturing the Spanish town of Santo Tomé, resulting in the demise of Raleigh's son Wat during the skirmish. Unable to find the mine, the crew returned to the ship, and facing Raleigh's anger, Kemmys took his own life. Back in England, Raleigh was put on trial for allegedly lying about the mine and trying to provoke a conflict with Spain, which ultimately led to his execution. Or maybe those were the Maori spirits who didn't appreciate the intrusion.
Scientists found an entire city of Gaiangola that was hidden beneath the dense jungles of Mexico for 600 years. It covers 360 hectares, had over 1,000 buildings, 2.5 miles of defensive walls, a network of internal roads, and a well-planned urban layout with temples and ball courts, and separate neighborhoods for the elites and commoners. For centuries, people believed there was just an abandoned fortress there, based on stories passed on from generation to generation. Until recently, there was no way to see how truly huge it was without spending years on the ground. But thanks to the new technology, a remote sensing tool called LiDAR, they got a 3D model of the area in just 2 hours from a plane. Gaiangola was built between the years 1350 and 1521. It was a crucially important place for the Zapotec people, a group that had lived in the area since around 700 BCE. In Gaiangola, families lived together in homes with big patios in the middle, surrounded by rooms. When families got bigger, they built more rooms and made their homes larger. The study found that both the leaders and regular people worked together to make the city better. Because Gaiangola was surrounded by mountains, they used this land wisely and built their houses in a way that fit the slopes and let rainwater flow naturally. This helped keep their homes safe and strong. They were built so well that many of these buildings are still standing, even after hundreds of years. There are 2 pyramids in the center of the city. They may have been used as temples where the priests celebrated rites and ceremonies to their deities. The priests brought offerings to the altars, and the people assembled at the 2 squares that are now sunken. Then, there is also a palace with 64 rooms, some of them with circular columns on several sloped terraces. There are patios with many stairways all connected to each other. The sensing tool also found a round-shaped lookout point on a natural rock, where the Zapotec people could see their foes approaching from a distance. Researchers also noticed 2 circular structures that could have been used to watch the stars and measure time. They also found some tombs, so there was most definitely a city cemetery. By the end of the 1400s, the Zapotec people controlled a large territory on the Pacific coast and had successfully defended their land from the Aztecs, who were trying to take over more territory. They did the almost impossible and survived a 7-month-long siege at Gaiangola. When they won this conflict and kept control of the southern part of Mesoamerica, the Zapotecs didn't need to live in Gaiangola anymore. Staying in the mountains had its pros, but they needed fresh water and good farmland to grow food. The small city of Tehuantepec, just 12 miles away, had these conditions, so they moved there just before the Spanish arrived in 1521. Over time, Zapotec traditions started to fade, but their culture didn't disappear completely, and more than 300,000 Zapotec people still live in Oaxaca State in Mexico. They speak their own languages and keep their traditions alive. Creating the 3D model of the lost city is just the beginning of the research. Archaeologists hope that future studies of Gaiangola will help us learn more about how the Zapotecs were organized, how they ruled their cities, and how they interacted with the Spanish when they arrived. They plan to study all 1,100 buildings found in the LiDAR scan, and it will take a few years. Instead of digging up the ruins, they will use special technology to scan the land and learn more about the city without damaging it. This same tech helped scientists find another massive ancient city that lay hidden beneath the thick green canopy of the Amazon forest. A whole network of houses, plazas, roads, and canals was hiding in the shadow of a mighty volcano. For centuries, many scientists assumed that ancient Amazonian people lived in tiny huts, clearing patches of land to survive. But this city, built 2,500 years ago and inhabited for 1,000 years, proves the opposite. Now, scientists think tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people lived in complex urban societies. Scanning the area found 6,000 rectangular platforms, each measuring around 66 by 33 feet, and standing 6 to 9 feet high. These structures were arranged in clusters around central plazas, with straight roads with perfect right angles and paths connecting them. One of the roads was 16 miles long. Building straight roads like this is far harder than just following the landscape. Some of these roads may have had deep spiritual or ceremonial significance. The volcano's rich soil helped the civilization thrive, but it may also have led to its downfall. Researchers also found signs of threats to the cities, such as ditches that blocked entrances to the settlements. Maybe some people living nearby were trying to get in. The next step for the researchers will be studying the adjoining 116 square miles to know more about this large, complex society that could be bigger than the well-known Mayan societies in Mexico and Central America. Meanwhile, in 1963, a man in Turkey discovered an ancient city while renovating his own house. He knocked down a wall in his basement and found a mysterious room. He kept digging and saw a tunnel. It led to the Derinkuyu underground city. It's one of the deepest multi-level underground settlements in Cappadocia and in all of Turkey. The inhabitants lived on 8 levels and had access to cellars, storage areas, chapels, a school, a study room, and other structures. All floors were connected by an extensive network of tunnels. The underground city was probably built as a shelter. The construction is hiding at 279 feet deep, and you can't see it from the outside. The complex was large enough to shelter about 20,000 people with their livestock and food supplies. There was also a 180-foot ventilation shaft. Archaeologists believe that Phrygians first built the levels. The Romans used and enhanced the structure later. The golden time of Derinkuyu was during the Byzantine era. The next lost and found city appeared only in a few inscriptions and ancient texts, so no one could be sure it really existed. Scientists searched the majority of the coast of Egypt until one archaeologist and his team detected a colossal face looking at them from under the water. The ancient city of Thonis Heraklion was discovered completely submerged 4 miles off Alexandria's coast. In the ruins of the lost city, there were 64 ships, 700 anchors, and a treasure trove of gold coins. Archaeologists believe the 16-foot-tall statue and the temple remains are the most important findings discovered by the expedition. Back then, the city had ceremonies and celebrations that took place in the Temple of Ammon. The ruins and artifacts were made from granite and diorite, so they were in good condition even after having been in contact with water for centuries. They give people a glimpse into what life was like 2,300 years ago in one of the most important trade ports of the world. The city had a network of canals, sort of like an ancient Egyptian Venice. The canals linked many separate harbors and anchorages. Towers, temples, houses, and other structures were also linked by bridges. Thonis Heraklion was the country's main port for international trade and the collection of taxes. No one really knows how the city ended up submerged, but archaeologists connect it with natural causes. At the end of the 2nd century BCE, most probably after a flood, it got covered with water. Then Alexandria, the city founded by Alexander the Great, became more glorious than Heraklion. Before Alexandria's fame, Heraklion was the main port of entry to Egypt. So after the tragedy, many ships heading for Heraklion had to change their route and go to Alexandria. Heraklion lost its glory until its discovery in 2000.